Hey, Andy here. Been at my job for about 3 months with Pure Storage, and for those that aren't familiar, Portworx is one of their offerings. They've got hardware, but they've also got Portworx as a Kubernetes CSI. Today, I kind of wanted to walk through kind of an install process, what's there, how to kind of get some of the most out of it, and if we've got time, hopefully we do. I'm going to go ahead and run through a backup. It might take a minute just to configure MinIO, which is an S3 object store, and then we can use that for storing backups. So, if you're interested in Portworx, you can go to portworx.com. Get a lot more information there. Of course, I've got a gist because I always like doing these things, make it easy to follow. Obviously, I'm using DigitalOcean. That's one of my favorites. RK82. I got to add some external volumes because Portworx likes using additional volumes. So there I've got my cluster set up, kubectl get node. You can see my 3 nodes. Let's go ahead and add some volumes to each of those VMs. That's just a DigitalOcean command to attach them. And one of the things to kind of think about is with Portworx, they really recommend going to central.portworx.com. Let me open that up. And from here, you can sign in or create an account, and you can get a 30-day trial. But you can also see where it says install and run. You go ahead and create new specs. So you can use the CSI or you can use Portworx Enterprise. I've been using the CSI just because it's easier to use, I think, just in general. One of the things that I've put in here is once you go through the spec, if I actually go back to it, once you go through the spec, here's my local one. I can edit it, but I can also I can view the actual spec, and this will basically give me a YAML. So instead of actually going through this process, and you can also go, and when you're done with it, next, you can change all your settings. Let me hit finish. Yeah, see how you basically install the operator, and then you do they call it a cluster, what was it? Hold on. A storage cluster object type that gets interpreted by the operator, and then that gets applied. So instead of kind of going through that, I've distilled it and cleaned it up a little bit. So let's kind of go through it. So I got my 3-node cluster. I've got my volumes attached. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and install the operator. And for those paying attention, I'm running 131, Kubernetes 131. So the operator is there. And Portworx, because that's the namespace I put in. So it's creating. We do have to give this a sec for that to come up for the CRD to be recognized. But I can go ahead and copy the spec. And what it's doing is it's installing the OCI monitor. There's an internal key value database. The storage, it's going to go find any unformatted volumes on the VM. I can go in here and be very specific and say like dev SDA, dev SDB. It does need a raw device. Storix, autopilot, telemetry, Prometheus. The Prometheus one is interesting because it gives us potential of installing Grafana. In fact, I have that in here, which is kind of cool. And those metrics are wild, how detailed they are with some pre-built dashboards. I turned telemetry off just because it's not realistic to the company if we're just playing. So let's go ahead and put in our storage cluster. And you can see we've already got Storix and a bunch of containers creating. And while that's coming up, and that will take a few minutes. While that's coming up, actually, I'll wait for that. We can skip a step real quick. It's going to create, this is the one thing I found a little confusing, is it's going to create a bunch of storage classes. And these are just examples of how to use it, right? The CSI database, the DB, encrypted or whatnot. I'm going to go ahead and with this command right here is I'm going to set the PXDB to the default. So what this basically means is any application that's going to go and say, hey, give me a persistent volume. It creates a PVC, persistent volume claim. I don't have to specify the storage class. It's just going to go fine. It's just basically going to ask Kubernetes to go, oh, that's fine. I've got a default one. You're good to go. Don't worry about it. So while, where's my watch command? There we go. So while we're waiting for all these to come up, I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and we will be right back. And we're back. Just for reference, it took about 10, 15 minutes for everything to come up. Think about all the different storage things, storage containers, storage pods, as well as formatting the file system and connecting in. So it's unexplainable that it took a little time. Cool. So with us being back, we can do get PVC. We don't have any PVCs. We don't have any apps. Let's go ahead and deploy some apps. Yeah, we can do that. I have a little demo script here. It's going to deploy a few things. Flask, MinIO. What else am I going to deploy? A few other little things. While that's deploying, let's talk about Grafana, and we can talk about Central. So Central, for lack of a better term, is a GUI that Portworx has for just viewing what's going on. It is relatively limited. We can actually extend that by making sure that when we install it, we install the PX-Backup component and the CRDs. And so that makes it a lot more full-featured. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start that install. Cool, my apps are deployed. I'm going to start that install, and then we're going to pivot and deploy Grafana. Grafana should take a lot less time. The reason why we're doing this is it's going to take some time for the central stuff to deploy. Let's go ahead and add the repo. I think I already have it added, but no big deal. And then let's go ahead and do the central Helm chart install. Now, one of the things is it does not add an ingress object. So let me open a new terminal. Let me slide this up. I should have done this already, but oh well. Get ingress. We can see I've got a bunch of ingress objects, and we can see that it's the way I run my ingress is every node has the same ingress, so I can basically either do DNS, multiple A records for load balancing to the individual nodes. Right now, I kind of have everything pinned to the first node because I'm crazy like that. Yeah, wide. Everything's going to that first node, RKE1. So that's literally all and I have a wildcard DNS, which makes all these things, RFID.io, just work, which is kind of a hack, but it works well, especially for demonstrational purposes. Okay, cool. We're going to wait for all this to come up and admin. And if we want, we can watch get pod, and I believe I called it Central. Or is it PX Central? Yep, PX Central. So again, it's going to take another 10-15 minutes, and it's loading a bunch of things, Prometheus operator, Mongo, because it's a daemon set, does take a few minutes to kind of form a quorum and become fully healthy and active. We'll let this run. In the meantime, in my second tab, and by the way, it's the same cluster, let's go ahead and add the ingress object, because why not? We'll go over here and add the ingress object, because that Helm chart does not include the ingress object. There you go, get. Just to validate me, and notice it doesn't have an IP address because it's not up yet. So that's PX. We've got MinIO, we've got Harbor and SRE. We'll configure MinIO in a few minutes. Oh, I got getness and get. I got a lot of things in my demo script, but I digress. Let's go ahead and add Grafana, and we've got docs here. By the way, all these links are to the docs, so if you ever want to go keep me honest, by all means. But I kind of TLDR'd it for you, and I'm just going to export this variable. And what this is going to allow me to do is just run a bunch of config map commands, and we're just creating basically the config maps for the data source and the dashboards. We'll go ahead and run that, and yep, added. So we've got, notice I'm using the Portworx namespace for this. So now I can go ahead and install Grafana with an ingress object, and we can watch to see this come up. And if we wanted to, Portworx, yep, we can see that Grafana is creating right now. Oh, sweet, my background changed. I love when that happens. And cool. Notice we've got central up, but not everything's running, but not everything is quote unquote healthy. So we've got to wait a few more minutes for that. Let's see where Grafana's at. Grafana's coming up. And we'll give that a second. Here, let's do. Okay, why isn't that coming up? Boink. Okay, still running. Give it another few seconds. Air gapping. Let's talk about air gapping because everyone appreciates a good air gap story. So there's kind of two things when we're talking about converting or moving Portworx across an air gap. First one is they have this list, they have this URL that'll actively list all the objects. Now this is where you could use a tool like Hauler. Hauler would be able to take this list as well as this list, combine the two lists, and really kind of pull in all those images across the air gap. And then you can use, as a neat little trick with like RKE2, you can use a registries.yaml to say, okay, all images point to that registry server, which in which case would be Hauler, and just serve out and just work. So you would actually be able to skip a lot of these steps. In addition, you don't actually have to go and adjust the Helm chart because what you're effectively doing in the case of like docker.io is you're telling the local containerd, the local container engine, any request for docker.io image is actually over there on Hauler. You can say wildcard, Quay.io, GCR, chain guards, whomever's registry. It's real simple to just say, go over there. So that's why combining Hauler and RKE2 makes really good sense for air gapping all the bits. Cool. And we see Grafana's up and running. And just to keep me honest, we can look. We got our ingress, grafana.rfed. We can come over here and pull that up. And admin, not now. I'm going to go ahead and skip changing the password. And we can see that it's loaded. We now have our dashboards. We can look at the cluster dashboard itself. We can start to see some good information, right? We can also go back. Another good one is the node information. This gives us a little more information about the individual node and the volumes. Notice here we can also go to the drop down and select the individual nodes. Other dashboards that I found really kind of interesting was the volumes. Now, remember, I don't have any volumes at PVC. Kube-get PVC. Oh, there we go. Now we got a bunch of PVCs. This is for, ironically, this is for Central in the backup. It's actually using storage to be stateful on Portworx underneath. So that's kind of cool. But you can also see I've got Redis and Flask. Okay, waiting for the last Mongo to come up. Do we risk it, complete it? Yeah, I think we can risk it. I think we're good. Okay, so because we're going to risk it for the biscuit, right? Let's go to px.rfed.io. And now we can see central admin. This will not let me skip it, so I use my standard password, which is PA22WRD. Let's go ahead and submit that. One kind of fun, cool thing is underneath the hood, it actually deploys Keycloak for OIDC, which is really cool, actually. Now, there's two kind of major pieces to the central here. We've got Lighthouse and we have clusters. Lighthouse is a simple overview, and I'm going to go ahead and add that now. Call it local rke.rfed.io. So that's the node itself. If any of you are familiar, port 9001 is actually a Prometheus port. So what this is effectively doing, enter metrics Grafana endpoint used for this cluster. Ooh, maybe I could connect it to Grafana. I'll try it another day. But basically, Lighthouse will give me just kind of a high-level overview of what's going on, the different nodes, drives, and potentially pools, right? Again, all this information is pumped out over Prometheus Grafana. So actually using the Grafana interface makes more sense from a metric standpoint of view. Because again, if I haven't said, Grafana, you can use Alert Manager to create alerts based on thresholds, okay? Another thing we have going on here is the cluster side. This is for backup. So let's go ahead and connect the cluster. I'm going to use other, and we're going to call it, what are we going to call it? Let's give it a fun name. Let's call it RKE2. That was a fun name. Oh, demo. Okay, and then it's asking for the kube config. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the kube config, but because I'm on a Mac, I'm going to pipe it to pb copy, which will allow me just to copy and paste it in. And then just hit add cluster. Okay. From here, this allows me to go in and start looking at applications, backups, restores, and things like that. So let's go ahead and do it. We got time. Let's go ahead and set this up. So I've got minio.rfed.io. Oh, learn to spell. minio.rfed. Here we go. So this is running on the cluster. Admin. No. Admin PA22WRD? Yes. Cool. Let's go to light mode. I like light mode sometimes. So I got to do two things. I got to create a bucket. Let's call it, learn to type. Backups. Let's go ahead and create that bucket. And then let's go to access keys. And we're going to create an access key. The name for this is going to be PX. Just leave it at PX. We're going to hit create. Don't save. So now I've got my access key and secret key. If I go back here, what I need to do is I need to go to clusters. Where is it? All backups. Now I'm brain farting. Where it is? Cluster. Applications. I'm looking for the where you actually set up your cloud accounts. License? Oh, why can't I find it right now? Add cloud account. That's an easy way to do it. Okay, so for cloud account, we're going to do an S3 object. This is kind of confusing. It's in two parts. The first one is you have to create the account, and then you have to create the URL. So they're not directly tied. So the cloud account name is just something, this is arbitrary. So MinIO. There's our access key, and here's our secret. Okay. Now that we've created those credentials, not now. Now we then can do a backup location. So we can do object store. We can again call it MinIO. We can select the account to use. The bucket is called backups. We're going to do it. We're going to disable, and we're going to put in the URL. I believe it's s3.rfed when I set it up. That's the actual S3 interface versus the console, which is MinIO. I use two different ingress names. And then a region, US East 1 is always the default region, right? So let's go ahead and hit add. Cool. So in earlier testing, I had the HTTPS set up wrong. I am doing it HTTP just for simplicity's sake for this. Obviously, you'd want to use good, legit certs. But we can see now that we've got the cloud settings for MinIO and the backup location done. So let's go. First, we need a test app to make this realistic. flash.rfed.io. And let's take a look at the hit counter. So what I'm going to do, let's pick a fun number, 70 something. Okay, 75. That's where the state of the application is. By the way, this is using Redis as a backend. What I can do is I can go in here to clusters. I can go into the demo cluster. Okay, I can look at my different applications. I can do Flask. What I can do now is I can say, let's go to backups and create a new backup. Whoops, sorry, applications, Flask. There you go, backup. What I'm going to do is I'm going to call this demo for my backup, cross-cloud backup resource. So this is actually going to get everything. It's going to get the volume, right? We can set our backup location to MinIO. I'm not putting it on a schedule because I'm going to do it right now. I don't need to worry about a pre-exec or post-exec. Although we could put something in here like shut the app down. Doesn't matter. Let's go ahead and create that. And now we're into the backup section. We can go and take a look at the individual backup. We can see that it's pending. We can also see here, we don't need to save that. We can go into our buckets. We see that we've got nothing written. This will take a minute or two, and I'm gonna pause it right now because actually let's go through the dashboard with Grafana while that's coming up. It shouldn't take too long. In my testing earlier, it took about 4 to 5 minutes for it to actually start implementing. So cool. We just refreshed Grafana. We're looking at the volume dashboard. We can see latency, concurrency, throughput. Let's go back to the cluster one for a second. Capacity used, heat map, storage providers. This looks good. Notice we've only got one cluster configured. We can go into the nodes. The node itself looks good. So again, we can drill down into the individual nodes if we wanted to. Cool. And then performance. This is one I was playing with earlier. So we can see the total number of volumes. We can even see the memory CPU of the nodes, the storage, pending I/O. This really gives us a lot of information. And talking to a Portworx engineer, they really recommended going this route versus Central just because of what's available. Notice right here, let's go ahead and refresh. And we can drill this if you guys aren't familiar with Grafana, you can kind of narrow the scope in terms of when the data, what you're looking at in terms of data. If we go look at Central, we'll leave that running for a second. We can go to Lighthouse. We can go look here at Local. And we can see, I can see the volumes. I can see the drives physically, but it doesn't give me much information about throughput or if there's any issues. That's really why they recommended going through Grafana. Okay, let's go take a look at the backups. Oh, success, great success. So let's go here to MinIO, let's refresh, and we can see, okay, we've got 14 objects and 24K of usage. Cool, so it's actually written something. So I'm gonna hit this, I'm gonna refresh a couple times. So you notice now the hit counter's in the 100, and delete NS, because I'm savage. I'm gonna actually delete everything. I'm gonna delete the app, I'm gonna delete the namespace, the ingress object, everything. I'm gonna delete everything. Because if we go back here to Central, we can see all the resources that were basically backed up. The volume claim, the secrets, the service, even the Redis pod, the Redis deployment that was important. Give that a sec. That usually takes a minute. Cool. 404 not found. That's exactly what we want to see. Because once that's done, we can go back in here and actually click the backup and hit restore. Okay. Now, if you were looking at doing cloud migration, restore Flask, no special characters, restore Flask, right? I can change my destination if I had multiple clusters here. So this would be a great way to migrate applications from cloud to cloud. Again, leveraging Portworx. Okay. So let's go in here and kubectl get NS. Notice I do not even have a Flask namespace. We'll go ahead and kick off the restore. And let's go ahead and see. In fact, in QuickTime, boom. Immediately, I've already got a Flask namespace. Again, this is great for cloud-to-cloud migration. This is great if you're trying to back up an entire application. One of the interesting things is there are other tools out there. There are other CSIs out there. There are other tools that can do this, but having it built into one product, relatively one product, but one suite, makes a lot of sense. Also, being able to connect Portworx, the CSI layer, to pure storage, FlashArray, FlashBlade, means that you really get one holistic view of all your storage and being able to take advantage of those speeds and deduplication. It's amazing. Okay, so let's go ahead and refresh this. And it says our restore is done. And if that's the case, boop, and notice now we're at 76. So that put us right back where we were in our state. That was awesome. That's a fun little demo. Okay, hopefully you can see all the tools are here to not only deploy Portworx with the custom spec, I wouldn't say custom, but the storage cluster spec. Again, so we use the operator, we did the spec. We just changed it to a default storage class. We added Portworx Central with backup capability, so that's kind of cool. And then we also deployed Grafana, so we get the even deeper dashboarding. And there's our dashboard, so we can see the number of backups, the number of applications that have been protected, and alerts and things like that. So this is a really cool kind of product suite, for lack of a better term. And then on my side of the house, being able to connect it into the FlashArray and the FlashBlade, the two big storage products, I think makes a lot of sense. I hope this helps. I hope this it took me some time talking to the Portworx engineer to kind of get my head around some of these tools and really kind of clean up the install process. And he was, like I said, he was the one that recommended Grafana, which is just, it's nice to have really good dashboarding, which is fantastic. I hope this helps. Remember to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff, and have a good day.